They say there was once a kingdom without end, where east met west beneath the same sun, where rivers ran straight as silver arrows toward cities shaped like stars. Its name is whispered beside Atlantis, the last blossom of a garden older than history. Tonight on Occult Bedtime Stories, Tartaria, the Erased Empire. They tell us history is a chain of events, one link after another, neat, certain, unbroken. The truth, they say, is written in books, carved in stone, kept in museums. But sometimes, if you peel back the gold leaf of the official record, you'll find the faint outlines of something that doesn't belong. A kingdom. An empire, a whole world that used to be there, and then wasn't. One of those shadows is called Tartaria. On maps from the 1600s, 1700s, and even into the early 1800s, Tartary stretches like a great sleeping dragon across the top of the world, covering half of Asia, spilling into Europe, its borders touching places as far apart as the Caspian Sea and the Pacific Ocean. It is not a small tribal name, not a forgotten province. It is bold, centered, prominent. If you want to walk further into the shadows of Tartaria, there are doors still left ajar. In the 1706 map by Guillaume de Lille and the chart by Erasure Mercator, there you'll find Tartary, written in bold, spanning lands now broken into dozens of nations. Notice how the name vanishes in editions printed after 1850. The way a star disappears from the night sky when you try to look directly at it. They tell us the word was just a cartographer's shorthand for unknown lands, but old books describe Tartarian people, Tartarian cities, Tartarian culture. Travelers wrote of glittering domed palaces. They drew sketches of star-shaped fortresses, spiraling minarets, and streets so wide you can turn an army in them. Some of these buildings still stand, but not always where you would expect. You can find them in St. Petersburg, San Francisco, and Melbourne, all in the same style: ornate stonework, onion domes, metal-tipped spires, appearing long before those regions supposedly had the means or reason to build them. The deeper you look, the stranger it becomes. Some maps and chronicles hint that Tartaria wasn't just one empire. It was a united civilization spanning continents. Its cities may have been more than places to live. Some believe the domes and spires were part of a planetary energy grid, drawing power from the air itself. No wires, no fuel, free energy flowing like wind or sunlight, harnessed through shapes, metals, and vibration. The star forts found on nearly every continent were not military defenses, but giant capacitors or resonators, shaping and directing energy through geometry. And then there are the giants. Not fairy tale monsters, but builders. Architects who could carve and place stone blocks so large they defy modern cranes. 19th century American newspapers, the kind you can still read on brittle microfilm, quietly reported the discovery of skeletons 10 to 15 feet tall during mining and excavation, almost always followed by a short note, removed to the Smithsonian. And then, silence. If Tartaria was their last great work, perhaps the erasure was also the burial of their story. Where did Tartaria go? They call it the mud flood, a sudden blanket of earth, soil, and silt that swallowed whole streets, covered doorways, and turned the first floors of buildings into basements overnight. Photographs from the late 1800s show grand doorways half buried, windows sunk below ground level, entire city blocks being dug out rather than built up. Some sudden event buried much of the world's architecture under meters of soil, and the survivors simply moved in above the ruins. But was it an act of nature or an act of design? Was it a shift in the Earth's crust, a sudden liquefaction of soil after massive earthquakes, or colossal tidal waves of mud set loose by melting ice caps? A reset, one of many in human history that leaves survivors scattered and knowledge lost. The buried buildings, they say, are simply the bones of a civilization caught mid-step. If it was man-made, a deliberate burial, it was a war fought not with armies, but with Earth itself. If a rival power wished to erase a civilization, its technology, its culture, its history, what better way than to choke its cities under mud? The survivors would be forced to rebuild in the ruins, forgetting in one generation what once stood. If Tartaria's heartland lay in what is now Russia, then remembering it might strengthen the idea of a united Eurasia, a vast independent power beyond the reach of Western empires. Better then to teach the world that Russia was backward, its greatness born only in recent centuries under the guidance of Europe. Better to scatter the pieces of its past and hide the pattern. Some claim this was done in the 18th or 19th century, not by one nation, but by a coalition of the rising industrial powers to wipe out the memory of a society that had mastered free energy. If you could draw power from the air, you would have no need for coal, oil, or centralized control. The world's greatest fortunes and the empires built upon them would have withered before they began. The story goes that they divided Tartaria's lands among themselves, wrote new histories, and sent expeditions to rebuild over the buried cities, carefully removing or hiding any surviving technology. The old star forts were renamed as military relics. The spires and domes became decorations, and the people absorbed into new national identities until they forgot who they were. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the World's Fairs arrive. The 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exposition, the 1900 Paris Exposition Universelle, the 1910 Brussels International Exposition. Ask yourself how such vast cities of stone, marble, and steel were built in a year, and why, after dazzling millions, they were burned and dismantled with such urgency. Gleaming cities appearing overnight, palaces, pavilions, impossibly intricate domes, lit with electric light before electricity was common, and just as quickly, they are gone. The official story says they were temporary, built of plaster and wood for a season's spectacle, but the photographs show columns of solid stone and massive steel girders. This tells another story. Were these truly fairgrounds, or the last surviving Tartarian cities displayed for one last hurrah before being reduced to rubble? What about architecture today? Stand before a cathedral with a golden dome or an iron spire. Look at the copper finials, the intricate lattice of metalwork. Ask yourself why so much effort was spent on decoration no one could see up close. Or was it not decoration at all? Was it machinery? Some say Tartaria was just the last chapter in a much older story, a recurring civilization that rises, masters nature, and then vanishes. Atlantis was an advanced maritime empire destroyed by a cataclysm. Tartaria was an advanced land-based empire erased by a mud flood. The parallels: sudden destruction, technological sophistication, erasure from history, feel too close to ignore. Believers point to structures across continents, pyramids, megaliths, and star forts that seem to operate on principles of energy harnessing and resonance. They suggest that Tartaria was the last visible chapter of this global system, inheriting technology from earlier ages. The free energy towers of Tartaria, they say, could be cousins of Atlantis's crystal-based energy transmitters. Some researchers who connect Tartaria to Atlantis argue that all ancient global age myths are connected. The names may change, but the pattern is the same. And again, we begin from the rubble, believing we are the first to reach the stars we have already touched. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, picture the streets of that forgotten empire, the air alive with a quiet hum, every building tuned like an instrument, the towers crowned with silver and gold, catching currents we no longer feel. And somewhere, beyond the edges of every modern map, the bells of Tartaria still ring, calling to those who remember. If you dig deep enough, you may find the erasure was never complete, only hidden, waiting for someone, perhaps you, to remember.